Before we had clocks on our phones and watches on our wrists, telling time was a wonderfully local affair. Imagine a world where the only clock you needed was the great fiery one in the sky. People looked at the sun. When it was directly overhead, that was noon. Simple. Every single town, from the grandest city to the smallest, sleepiest village, had its own unique time. The time in your town was determined by the sun's position, and it was called local solar time. If you walked to the next town over, their noon would happen a few minutes before or after yours. This was perfectly fine because honestly, nobody was going anywhere very fast anyway. This system worked beautifully for thousands of years. Life moved at the pace of a horse or a person's own 2 feet. If you were a farmer, you woke with the sun and went to bed not long after it set. The church bells might ring to mark the hours of prayer, but those bells were set to the local sun. Nobody in London cared what time it was in Bristol, because a message between the two cities would take days to arrive. The idea that everyone should agree on the exact same minute would have seemed utterly bizarre, a solution to a problem that simply did not exist in their world. Everything was based on this simple, observable fact. The sun marches across the sky. When it was high, it was midday. When it was low on the horizon, the day was ending. This was the natural rhythm of life, a clockwork universe powered by our planet's steady rotation. People built sundials, magnificent and simple devices that did nothing more than track a shadow. It was a personal and immediate way of understanding the day. Time wasn't an abstract number, it was a shadow stretching across the garden path or the shortening of light on a cathedral wall. Of course, this meant that time was a bit fuzzy. On a cloudy day, figuring out the exact time was a matter of guesswork. And what was noon exactly? Was it when the shadow was shortest, or when the sun felt highest? It didn't matter too much. If you were meant to meet a friend at noon, you both just showed up around the middle of the day. A few minutes here or there was of no consequence. This relaxed, sun-based approach to time was woven into the very fabric of society for centuries, a quiet and sensible system for a slower, less connected world. Then came the trains. Suddenly, in the 19th century, the world started to speed up in a way that was previously unimaginable. A journey that once took several days by horse-drawn carriage could now be completed in a matter of hours. This was revolutionary, a magnificent leap forward for humanity. But it also created a spectacular and profoundly confusing problem. A train traveling from east to west could pass through dozens or even hundreds of different local times on a single trip. A station's clock in one town would show a different time from the station clock in the very next town down the line. Imagine you are a traveler in the 1860s. You look at the train schedule and it says the train departs at 10 o'clock in the morning. But whose 10 o'clock is it? The time in the city where the schedule was printed? The local time of the station you are standing in? Or the time of the railway company's headquarters? It was chaos. Some railway companies tried to solve this by running on their own railway time, usually the time of their main office. But different companies used different railway times. It was not uncommon for a single train station to have 3 or 4 clocks on the wall, all showing different times, none of which matched the local city time. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it was genuinely dangerous. The risk of collisions was enormous. A station master in one town might believe he had 10 minutes to let a local freight train cross the tracks based on his local clock. But the driver of an incoming express train, running on a railway time that was 8 minutes ahead, would be bearing down on him far sooner than expected. The newspapers of the era were filled with terrifying accounts of accidents caused by nothing more than chronological confusion. It became painfully clear that you couldn't run a modern, high-speed network on an ancient, sun-based system of timekeeping. The problem seeped into every corner of life. Businesses trying to coordinate with offices in other cities found it maddening. If you sent a telegraph message, when would it arrive? Its arrival time might be earlier than its departure time if it traveled west. People missed their connections, goods were lost, and frustration mounted. The world had built a magnificent, fast-moving machine in the railway, but it had forgotten to give it a single unified clock to run by. The sun, once the perfect timekeeper, was now the source of a massive, nationwide headache. Out of this temporal chaos, a few forward-thinking individuals began to propose a radical idea. What if we standardized time? The most prominent of these visionaries was a Scottish-born Canadian railway engineer named Sandford Fleming. After missing a train in Ireland in 1876 because the schedule was printed in a different local time, Fleming became obsessed with the problem. He wasn't the only one thinking about it, but he became its most tireless and influential champion. He proposed that the world be divided into 24 distinct sections, like slices of an orange, creating a system of global time zones. The idea was beautifully simple, at least in theory. Each time zone would be 15 degrees of longitude wide because the Earth spins 15 degrees every hour. Within each zone, every clock would be set to the exact same time. When you crossed from one zone into the next, you would simply adjust your watch by exactly 1 hour. This would eliminate the messy problem of every town having its own peculiar time based on the sun. It would bring order and predictability to a world that desperately needed it, especially for the railways, shipping, and the burgeoning telegraph networks that were tying the globe together. Of course, getting everyone to agree to this was another matter entirely. People were attached to their local solar time. It felt natural, God-given even. Who was some railway planner to tell an entire city that their noon was no longer the real noon? Despite the resistance, the logic of the railway companies was unstoppable. In North America, the major railroads implemented a system of standard time zones on November 18, 1883, a day that became known as the Day of Two Noons. On that day, clocks across the continent were stopped and restarted to align with the new system, creating a moment of strange temporal stillness before order was restored. The success of this experiment in North America paved the way for a global agreement. In 1884, representatives from 25 countries met in Washington, D.C. for the International Meridian Conference. It was here that they formally established the system we use today. They agreed that the prime meridian, the starting line for the world's time and longitude, would run through the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England. From this line, known as Greenwich Mean Time, all other time zones would be calculated. The world had finally been synchronized, its time neatly organized by a series of imaginary lines drawn across a map. Today, it is almost impossible to imagine our world without time zones. They are the invisible infrastructure that allows our global society to function. Think about making an international phone call. You instinctively check the time difference to make sure you aren't waking someone up in the middle of the night. That simple act is possible only because of the standardized systems Sanford Fleming and others championed over a century ago. Time zones provide a common frame of reference, a universal language of time that connects every corner of the planet, from bustling Tokyo to a remote research station in Antarctica. Our global economy runs on this synchronized clockwork. The stock market in New York opens, followed by London and then Tokyo, in a continuous 24-hour cycle of trade, all seamlessly coordinated by time zones. When you book an international flight, the departure and arrival times are unambiguous, preventing the kind of chaos travelers faced in the age of steam. News events unfold in real time across the globe, and we can all watch them happen together, whether it's morning for us and evening for someone else. This shared experience, this ability to sync our lives, is a direct legacy of those lines drawn on a map. The system isn't perfect, of course. Countries can and do change their time zones for political or economic reasons. And then there is the wonderfully peculiar business of daylight saving time, where we agree to collectively pretend it's an hour later for half the year, a practice that still causes endless debate. Some large countries, like China, use a single time zone for their entire vast territory, leading to some strange situations where the sun might not rise until 10 o'clock in the morning in the far west. These quirks are a reminder that time, even standardized time, is ultimately a human invention. But for all its oddities, the invention of time zones was a monumental achievement. It was a recognition that as our world became more connected through technology, our fundamental way of organizing our day had to evolve as well. From the simple shadow of a sundial to a global network synchronized to the second, the story of timekeeping is the story of our own journey toward a more interconnected existence. Time zones are the silent, unsung heroes of the modern age, the global pacemaker that keeps our complex world ticking in unison, 1 hour at a time.